In Washington, D.C., Jayden, a 15-year-old black teenager, stood outside the grand gates of the White House, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. His mother, the United States Secretary of Health, was inside attending a crucial meeting discussing policies that could affect millions. While he was proud of his mother's achievements, Jayden often felt the weight of expectation on his shoulders, especially today. As he waited, Jayden looked around the bustling surroundings. The sun was shining brightly, and tourists were snapping photos of the iconic building. Families laughed and pointed out historical landmarks, oblivious to the political undertones surrounding them. Jayden admired the imposing structure of the White House, its white columns standing tall against the clear blue sky. He had always felt a sense of awe whenever he visited, but today was different. He felt a strange tension in the air. Deciding to take advantage of the warm day, Jayden wandered into Lafayette Park, which lay just across from the White House. The park was alive with people enjoying their day off, but for some reason Jayden felt an inexplicable sense of foreboding. Maybe it was the conversations he overheard about recent political tensions or the lingering discussions on racial injustice that he had been exposed to. Jayden made his way to a bench, his mind racing with thoughts. As he sat there, he couldn't help but wonder what his mother was discussing inside. Would she bring up the issues that mattered to him? Would she speak for those who often felt unheard? He often dreamed of using his voice to make a difference, inspired by his mother's dedication to her work. While lost in thought, he noticed a group of children playing nearby, their laughter ringing out like music. Jayden remembered simpler times in his childhood when he could run and play without a care in the world. Those days felt so far away now, especially as he navigated the complexities of being a black teenager in America. Suddenly, Jayden's reverie was interrupted by the approach of a white police officer. The officer's stern expression and authoritative stance sent a chill down his spine. Jayden instinctively sat up straighter, feeling a surge of anxiety. He had seen enough news stories to know how quickly situations could escalate, especially for someone who looked like him. "Hey, what are you doing here?" the officer demanded, his tone sharp and accusatory. Jayden's heart raced as he processed the sudden confrontation. "I'm just waiting for my mom," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady, though he felt a knot tightening in his stomach. The officer stepped closer, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "You don't belong here. This is a restricted area," he asserted, completely disregarding Jayden's explanation. Jayden felt the weight of the officer's words crush him, his mind racing with confusion and disbelief. How could someone accuse him of wrongdoing without even knowing him? Panic surged within Jayden as the officer grabbed his arm firmly. "You need to come with me," he ordered, his grip unyielding. Jayden's heart sank. He felt like a criminal, though he had done nothing wrong. The laughter of the children faded into the background as he was pulled away, an innocent caught in a web of prejudice and misunderstanding. In a matter of moments, Jayden found himself standing in front of a patrol car, his pulse quickening. The world around him blurred as he tried to process what was happening. He felt the stares of onlookers, some shocked, some curious, and some indifferent. It was as if the entire park had turned against him, and he was powerless to defend himself. "Sir, I really am just waiting for my mom," Jayden pleaded, desperation lacing his voice. But the officer's expression remained stern, and the world around him seemed to conspire against him. He longed for someone to step forward, to advocate for him, to see him as more than just a suspect. As the officer prepared to place him in the back of the patrol car, Jayden's mind raced. He thought of his mother, the strong, determined woman who had worked tirelessly to pave the way for others. Would she know? Would she care? And most importantly, would she be able to help him? Just then, a voice broke through the commotion. A senior officer approached, his face a mix of confusion and concern. "Wait a minute," he said, recognizing Jayden. "Isn't this the secretary's son?" The atmosphere shifted as the realization dawned on everyone present. Jayden's heart fluttered with hope as he awaited what would happen next. In that moment, the tension in the air began to dissipate. But Jayden knew that the scars of this day would remain with him forever. Little did he know, this incident would spark conversations that extended far beyond himself, touching on issues of race, privilege, and the quest for justice in America. As the senior officer approached, the weight of Jayden's anxiety began to lift slightly, but he still felt the sting of humiliation as the younger officer held him tightly. "This isn't a joke, kid. You can't just wander into places like this." The younger officer snapped, still unaware of the gravity of his actions. Jayden's heart raced. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I was just waiting for my mom," he protested, trying to explain himself again. But his words fell on deaf ears. The younger officer's grip tightened as he moved to push Jayden toward the patrol car. Jayden glanced around desperately, hoping someone would intervene, but the crowd merely watched in silence, some taking videos on their phones, others whispering among themselves, Feeling overwhelmed, Jaden struggled to maintain his composure. "I promise I'm not doing anything wrong," he exclaimed, but the officer remained unmoved. He couldn't believe this was happening to him, especially in a place that held so many memories of his mother's hard work. The stark reality of being a young black man in America weighed heavily on him at that moment. He felt invisible and vulnerable, reduced to just another statistic. Just as Jaden's world began to close in around him, the senior officer finally reached him. "Stop. Let him go," he commanded, his voice authoritative yet calm. The younger officer hesitated, clearly confused, but slowly loosened his grip on Jaden's arm. "Sir, he's just a kid," the senior officer continued, looking at Jaden with a mixture of empathy and concern. "What's going on here?" "He was trespassing," the younger officer replied defensively, still trying to justify his actions. "I thought he was up to no good." The senior officer raised an eyebrow. "Really? Did you even ask him what he was doing? This is a public park." Jaden's heart sank and soared at the same time. The realization that someone was finally standing up for him filled him with hope. "I was just waiting for my mom," he said, his voice shaking but clear. As the senior officer listened, he nodded, clearly recognizing the young man's distress. He turned to Jaden, his expression softening. "I'm sorry you had to go through this. Let's get you back to your mother." In that moment, Jaden felt a rush of relief wash over him. Just as he began to breathe again, he saw his mother approaching from the White House, her face a mixture of worry and anger. "Jaden," she called out, rushing toward him. Seeing his mother sprinting towards him, Jaden felt a flood of emotions: relief, anger, and confusion. "Mom," he cried out, the tears he had been holding back now spilling over. His mother reached him just as the senior officer stepped aside. "What happened?" she demanded, her eyes flicking to the younger officer, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Your son was mistakenly thought to be trespassing," the senior officer explained. "It's all been sorted out now. He didn't do anything wrong." "Of course he didn't. He was just waiting for me," she exclaimed, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "You need to understand that this is not acceptable. My son is not a criminal." Jaden looked up at his mother, feeling a swell of pride. He knew how much she had fought for the rights of others, and now she was fighting for him. "I'm sorry, Mom," the younger officer mumbled, but the words felt hollow. "Sorry doesn't cut it," she replied sharply. "You need to understand the impact of your actions. This isn't just about one mistake, it reflects a larger issue of how young black men are treated in this country." As the confrontation continued, Jaden stood silently beside his mother, his heart pounding. He felt a mix of gratitude for her defense and frustration for the entire situation. The senior officer nodded, recognizing the gravity of what had just unfolded. "I'll make sure this is addressed," he promised, his expression serious. "You have my word." Jaden took a deep breath, feeling the tension start to dissipate as his mother turned to him, her expression softening. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "Yeah, I'm okay," he replied, though he could still feel the sting of the handcuffs on his wrists and the embarrassment of being treated like a criminal. "Let's get you home," she said, taking his hand and leading him away from the gathering crowd. As they walked, Jaden glanced back at the officers, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. This experience would stick with him, but he also knew it was just the beginning of a much larger conversation. Later that evening, as they sat down for dinner, Jaden found it difficult to shake off the day's events. His mother, sensing his discomfort, initiated a conversation. "What happened today is a harsh reminder of the world we live in," she said gently. "But it's important we talk about it. Your voice matters, and we need to make sure people hear it." Jaden nodded, knowing she was right. He didn't want to be just another story, he wanted to be part of the solution. And in that moment, he realized that perhaps his experience, as painful as it had been, could become a catalyst for change. After the chaotic events of the day, Jaden and his mother sat in silence at the dinner table, the clinking of cutlery the only sound breaking the heavy atmosphere. The delicious smell of grilled chicken and vegetables filled the air, but Jaden had lost his appetite. His mother, usually so animated and full of life, looked weary, her brow furrowed with worry. "Mom, are you okay?" Jaden finally asked, breaking the silence. She looked up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I'm fine, sweetheart. It's just... Today was difficult," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I never wanted you to experience something like this, especially not at your age." "I didn't do anything wrong," though, Jaden insisted, his voice rising with frustration. "Why did they treat me like that? Just because I'm black?" His mother took a deep breath, steeling herself against the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Yes, honey. And that's what makes this so heartbreaking. This isn't just about you, it's about so many others who face the same injustice." Jaden nodded, feeling a mix of anger and confusion. But it's not fair. Why do I have to deal with this just because of my skin color? Life isn't always fair, Jaden, she said, her tone softening. But it's important that we acknowledge these injustices and fight against them. You have a voice and together we can make a difference. Jaden looked at his mother, admiring her strength. She was right, he had witnessed her tirelessly advocating for others, and now it felt like it was his turn. What can we do, he asked, a spark of determination igniting within him. We need to start a conversation, she replied. We can share your experience and shed light on the issues surrounding it. You could write about it, speak at community events, or even use social media to raise awareness. But it has to be genuine. Jaden pondered her words, feeling both scared and empowered. What if people don't listen, he asked, his voice laced with doubt. Even if it's just one person who hears you, that's one step toward change, she reassured him. And remember, you're not alone. There are many people who care about this cause and want to support you. As the evening wore on, Jaden felt a sense of purpose growing within him. This wasn't just about one incident, it was about a movement, a chance to be part of something bigger than himself. The next few days were a whirlwind. The media attention surrounding Jaden's incident exploded, with news outlets clamoring to cover the story. Reports highlighted not just what happened to him, but also the broader implications regarding race relations in America. Jaden found himself thrust into the spotlight. And while part of him enjoyed the attention, another part felt overwhelmed. He was just a kid trying to navigate the complexities of life, and now he was expected to be a spokesperson for a cause. As Jaden scrolled through social media, he saw posts from people sharing their own stories of racial profiling and discrimination. It was both heartening and heartbreaking. He realized that he wasn't alone in this struggle. Many others had faced similar situations. At school, Jaden's peers were buzzing with the news. Some supported him, while others remained indifferent. A few classmates approached him, expressing their solidarity. "It's messed up what happened to you, man. You didn't deserve that," one of them said. "Thanks," Jaden replied, grateful for their support but unsure how to respond. "I just don't want to be known as the kid who got arrested." "You're more than that," another friend chimed in. "You have a chance to make a difference. You can turn this around." Jaden took their words to heart. He knew that he had an opportunity to use his voice for something meaningful, and it scared him. But he was ready to step up and confront the injustices he had witnessed. With his mother's encouragement, Jaden decided to host a community meeting at a local youth center. He wanted to create a safe space for young people to share their experiences and discuss ways to combat racial injustice. As the day of the meeting approached, Jaden felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. What if no one showed up? What if he couldn't articulate his thoughts clearly? But he pushed those fears aside, reminding himself of the importance of this initiative. On the evening of the meeting, Jaden arrived early to set up the room, placing chairs in a circle and arranging snacks on a table. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves as he awaited the arrival of attendees. One by one, young people started to trickle in, filling the room with laughter and chatter. Jaden was surprised at the turnout. It seemed that many shared his desire to have their voices heard. When the time came to start, Jaden stood in front of the group, his heart pounding. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "I know it's not easy to talk about these issues, but I believe we can make a difference together." He shared his story of what had happened in front of the White House, how it made him feel, and the broader implications of systemic racism. As he spoke, he saw nods of understanding and expressions of empathy. "Many of us have experienced something similar," a girl named Mia said, her voice breaking slightly. "I was stopped by a cop just because I was hanging out with my friends at the park." The room erupted with stories of similar experiences, moments of fear, confusion, and anger. Jaden realized that this was more than just a meeting. It was a cathartic release for everyone involved. They were sharing their pain and frustration, but they were also seeking solutions. As the meeting progressed, Jaden facilitated discussions about how they could create change in their community. Ideas flowed freely, organizing protests, starting a social media campaign, and partnering with local organizations dedicated to fighting racism. One young man suggested, "What if we create a video series where we share our stories? It could go viral and raise awareness." "That's a great idea," Jaden replied, feeling energized by the enthusiasm in the room. By the end of the meeting, everyone felt a sense of camaraderie. They had taken the first step toward not only addressing their grievances but also finding solutions together. Jaden was filled with hope as he watched his peers rally around a cause that mattered deeply to them. After the meeting, Jaden and his mother sat down to reflect on the evening's success. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her eyes shining with admiration. "You've become a leader in your own right." Jaden felt a warm flush of pride at his mother's words. "I couldn't have done it without your support, Mom," he replied. "It's about all of us coming together." "That's exactly it," she said. "Change happens when people unite for a common cause. Remember, your voice has power." As Jaden lay in bed that night, he thought about the meeting and how far he had come since the day he was unjustly accused. He had taken the darkness of that experience and transformed it into something positive. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The next day, Jaden woke up to a flood of notifications on his phone. The community meeting had gained traction on social media, with people sharing clips and stories from the event. News outlets had picked up the story, framing Jaden as a young activist rising up against racial injustice. He felt a mix of pride and trepidation as he watched the coverage unfold. Local teen organizes community meeting to combat racial injustice, read one headline. Another article described him as a voice for a generation, and Jaden couldn't help but feel the weight of those words. His mother reminded him to stay grounded. "Remember, Jaden, this attention can be a double-edged sword. Use it wisely," she advised, her tone serious but encouraging. Jaden understood the responsibility that came with the newfound attention. He needed to navigate this carefully, ensuring that his message remained authentic and focused on the issues at hand. As interviews and social media interactions increased, he found himself speaking at various events, sharing his story and advocating for change. Each time he spoke, he felt more confident, his voice resonating with those who listened. As weeks turned into months, Jaden's activism began to gather momentum. He and his friends launched a social media campaign called Voices of Change, where they encouraged young people to share their experiences with racial profiling and injustice. The hashtag began trending, with stories pouring in from across the country. In schools, Jaden worked with teachers to implement discussions about race and privilege, fostering a more inclusive environment. He organized workshops where students could share their stories, learn from one another, and develop strategies to advocate for themselves and their communities. But it wasn't just about sharing stories, it was about action. Jaden and his friends planned a large-scale march to raise awareness about systemic racism and to honor those who had suffered from injustice. They collaborated with local organizations, securing permits and organizing speakers for the event. The day of the march dawned bright and sunny, the clear blue sky reflecting the hope and determination that filled Jaden's heart. As he stood at the starting point, he could see people gathering, their faces filled with purpose. And families, students, activists, and community leaders all came together, united by a shared vision for justice and equality. Jaden wore a t-shirt emblazoned with the slogan Voices of Change and a handmade sign that read, "Racism stops here." He looked around, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The air buzzed with energy, and he could hear snippets of conversations and laughter, a testament to the community spirit that had been rekindled. As the crowd grew larger, Jaden took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. Just a few months ago, he was a boy who had been unfairly accused, feeling powerless and alone. Now, he was a symbol of hope for many, leading a movement that aimed to dismantle the very injustices he had experienced. When the time came to start, Jaden stepped up to the microphone, his heart racing. "Thank you all for being here today," he called out, his voice echoing across the crowd. "We stand together not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has faced discrimination and injustice. Our voices matter." The crowd erupted into cheers, and Jaden felt a surge of adrenaline. "Today we march for change. We march to demand respect, equality, and justice for all." As they began to walk, the sound of chanting filled the air. "No justice, no peace. End racism. We won't cease." Jaden led the march with his friends by his side, feeling the power of unity surging through them. People held signs that expressed their own experiences, frustrations, and hopes for the future. Some read, "I can't breathe," while others said, "Black Lives Matter." The diversity of voices was overwhelming, and Jaden felt a sense of pride swell within him. As they reached the heart of the city, the march swelled in size, drawing attention from bystanders who stopped to witness the movement. Jaden could see the impact they were making, and it filled him with a sense of purpose. This was not just a moment, it was a movement that would leave a lasting legacy. At the end of the march, a platform had been set up for speakers to share their stories and messages. Jaden stood alongside community leaders, activists, and individuals who had faced racial injustice. One by one, they spoke, sharing powerful testimonies that resonated deeply with the crowd. When it was his turn, Jaden stepped forward, gripping the microphone tightly. "My name is Jaden, and I'm here to share my story. I was just a kid waiting for my mom when I was treated like a criminal. I was scared and confused, but I knew I had to stand up for myself and for others. This isn't just about me, it's about everyone who has faced injustice. We cannot stay silent anymore. It's time to demand change and hold those in power accountable. Let's make sure our voices are heard and that we fight for a better future. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers, the collective energy fueling Jaden's resolve. He felt empowered, knowing that they were all part of something larger than themselves. In the weeks following the march, Jaden's efforts continued to gain momentum. The community had come together in ways he never thought possible, launching initiatives aimed at addressing racial inequalities. Schools began implementing anti-bullying campaigns that focused on inclusivity, and local organizations sought to provide resources for those affected by systemic racism. Jaden became a regular speaker at community events, sharing his story and inspiring others to use their voices for change. He collaborated with local leaders to organize youth forums where young people could discuss issues affecting their lives, creating an ongoing dialogue about race and privilege. The media continued to cover the movement, shining a light on the collective efforts of young activists advocating for justice. Jaden felt proud to be part of this change, yet he knew that the work was far from over. One day, as he sat with his mother discussing their next steps, she looked at him with pride. "You've become a beacon of hope for so many, Jaden. You've turned your pain into purpose, and that's not easy to do." "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom," he replied, feeling grateful for her unwavering support. "You always taught me to stand up for what's right." As they spoke, a thought struck Jaden. What if we could organize a youth summit? A place where young people from different backgrounds could come together, share their stories, and develop action plans for change. His mother's eyes lit up. "That's an incredible idea. You could invite speakers, create workshops, and empower youth to take action in their communities." The more they discussed it, the more excited Jaden became. He envisioned a summit where young voices could unite, fostering a sense of solidarity and igniting passion for social justice. With his mother's encouragement, Jaden began organizing the youth summit, reaching out to schools, community centers, and local organizations for support. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Young people were eager to share their experiences and work together to create meaningful change. The day of the summit arrived, and Jaden felt a mix of anticipation and nerves. The venue was packed with young people, each one buzzing with energy and enthusiasm. As he stood at the front, looking out at the sea of faces, he felt a sense of purpose wash over him. "Welcome everyone," Jaden said, his voice ringing out. "Today we're here to share our stories, learn from one another, and develop action plans that can drive change in our communities. Together, we are the future." Workshops and discussions filled the day, with participants sharing their experiences, brainstorming ideas, and developing strategies to advocate for themselves and others. Jaden felt invigorated as he listened to the passionate voices around him, each story unique yet connected by a shared desire for justice. At the end of the summit, Jaden gathered everyone for a closing ceremony. "Today has been incredible," he said, a smile spreading across his face. "We've all shared our voices, and together we can create change. Remember, this is just the beginning. Let's continue to fight for a world where everyone is treated with respect and dignity." As applause erupted in the room, Jaden knew that they had sparked a fire that couldn't be extinguished. The summit was a testament to the power of youth, and he felt honored to be part of this movement. Epilogue: a lasting legacy. Months turned into years, and Jaden's activism continued to flourish. The Youth Summit became an annual event, growing larger each year as more young people joined the movement. Jaden remained dedicated to raising awareness about racial injustice, using his platform to amplify the voices of those often silenced. His story became a symbol of resilience and hope, inspiring countless others to stand up and fight for change. He learned that while the road ahead was long, each step taken, each voice raised, and each story shared brought them closer to a more just world. Jaden understood that true change required perseverance, unity, and the courage to speak out. And with each new day, he remained committed to ensuring that the voices of his generation would never go unheard. Together, they would continue to build bridges, foster understanding, and fight against injustice, leaving a lasting legacy for future generations. In the end, Jaden realized that he wasn't just a boy who had faced injustice. He had become a leader in a movement that would pave the way for a brighter future, a future where equality and justice reigned for all.